about this a bit later, but I just wanted to really just go to the main, I call it the main event because it's something which I learn something new every week. Khurram shaking his head, but it's not. But anyways, Khurram bhai, friend from a long time, just like Kobe, we always used to meet up in football and always used to be the guy that used to be the roughest player, I think, in the team, but always the fairest player. Played many years against you. Now, alhamdulillah, I have the opportunity to play with you. Jazakallah for joining us today. Khurram, as you know, is our brother right from the beginning, born and bred in Birmingham, raised in Walsall. I went back to Birmingham. We're trying to get him back soon, inshallah. But Khurram, tell us about your life, man. Tell us your journey, and inshallah how you go into your work. But before that, let's just go through your childhood and eventually to your marriage.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say salam to everyone. I just want to apologize because I know that I haven't attended many of these sessions, and I feel as though the first one that I attended, Murabi Sahib just gripped me, and he said, "Well, you're doing a talk next week." I have no choice in the matter.
It's actually your brother's fault. It's Nas told Kobe to do it. Now I'm telling you to.
Pick it on the Rehan thing. It's NASA next week, yeah?
Yeah, that's the next week.
Yeah, so just to introduce myself, Khurram Rehan. I can see my father there.
We'll turn off his camera, don't
So yeah, that's it.
Go on, what are you saying?
No, I was just going to say it better be worth my while listening to this. This is called me over here. So, Assalamu alaikum, Rabbi Sahib, and everybody else.
Our special guest as usual.
Oh, mashallah. How are you?
Go on, carry on now, carry on.
Yeah, so just to quickly introduce myself, for those that don't know me, Khurram Rehan. I'm 30 years old, part of Birmingham North Jamaat. I suppose just a bit of family background. My grandfather came here, as Kavibai mentioned last week, many over years ago, and he's one of the founding members of the Birmingham Jamaat. And mashallah, he's over 90 years old now, and he's got a lot of wisdom, a lot of stories to tell, and he's still mashallah very switched on. Till this day he knows when was the last time that I came to see him, and he'll pull out a book where he'll state exactly the date and time when I came last, and he's mashallah still very alert. But yeah, just a bit about myself, I guess. I'm currently serving as Khidmat al-Khalq Nazim for the region. I've served in a number of different capacities. Sayyid Jismani, I've served as Mu'tamid, Tariq Jadid, Waqf Jadid. I think the regional title, so I was taking it easy on that year around the time when I got married. So yeah, I've had a few different roles in the Jamaat. I guess maybe so you want to talk about my career as well.
Yeah. So take us through so your childhood is done. Obviously you raised more with Walsall boys, right? You know them, you're a bit closer to them, and you went through most of your education with them. And I can really see that. I really saw that when I was playing football with you guys, how your cohesion was really good, and you showed that you guys really love each other in that way. That the brotherhood is really strong. So from that, but I never knew you as person. I didn't know how you are as a person or anything. So how was going through school with everyone with Ahmadis and being always tight knit with the Jamaat in that way?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I was quite blessed because Walsall Jamaat, when I was growing up, there's a number of us boys, that were growing up together, and with Gavibai's guide, all of us were growing up together and under his sort of command, you could say, and it was blessed. I studied with, you could say, I studied with Nasir at school. He was a year above me. Studied with Taha when I was at university, although he studied a different course. So yeah, it was good to be around the boys. It's sad to leave also, but it was for for comfort purposes, I guess. And I don't think Birmingham's that bad.
We're still glad to have you in the region, so that's the main thing. We're far, but we're close at the same time.
Yeah.
So you said that you went into law in university.
Yeah. So So I studied law.
Quite different to your line of work, isn't it?
Yeah, so I studied law at University of Birmingham, and I went on to do the LPC, which is a legal practice course. It's like the vocational course that solicitors do in order to practice as solicitors. Original plan was to become a solicitor and practice as a fee earner. After I graduated from the College of Law, managed to secure a role at a large international law firm called, at the time, Rag & Co. And then it combined, and now it's called like Gowling WLG. And I managed to, well, I was there for just under 4 years, you could say, and alhamdulillah, I got some really good experience there. But for me, that was long enough to know that I didn't want to practice and practice as a fee earner. And I'd almost built my own niche in money laundering matters. And you know, I guess that was my sort of specialist area when I was at the law firm, and I started to explore my opportunities because you know, I felt that it was time for change. So I started looking into banking, and I knew that, you know, there's, you know, a lot of hot press on the banking sector because a lot of banks were being at the time you know, fined and sort of under scrutiny because of all the different money laundering failings, and you know, sort of it was a hot topic at the time. So I knew that with my experience I could go in and, you know, bring something valuable. And I was offered a job at HSBC. It's about 3 years ago. And I was there for around 10 months. And you know, I got some really good valuable experience, was able to build you know, knowledge within the banking sector, understand sort of my area a bit more from a banking perspective, and bring that sort of legal knowledge in as well. So you know, that after that role, I was then contacted by Deutsche Bank for a sort of consulting role, which I guess leads me to my title and what you used as the sort of subject.
Can you just explain your title a little bit? What is independent financial crime?
Yeah, so essentially all it means is, so it's a bit of a mouthful, independent financial crime consultant. All it means is that I'm self-employed. I work in the financial crime sector, and you know, I do it on a consulting basis. So I'm contracted by the banks to work independently. So I come in for a particular project, help them to you know, achieve the targets that are required for that project, and then I'll go. so basically, it's cost effective for them, and it's good for me because I get to jump around different banks, get to acquire the experience, acquire the knowledge, and then move on, which helps me obviously to grow, and obviously to get a better understanding of the way different banks work as well. So I mean, so after HSBC, I was at Deutsche Bank for 10 months, and then I went to a bank called Handelsbanken, which is, I don't know if many of you have heard, it's a Swiss bank, and they deal with sort of very sophisticated clients, you know, they high net worth individuals, those kind of people. And it was, I had a 6 month stint there. Again, that was on a consulting basis. In Manchester, wasn't the best time of my life away from the family. But I was then offered a role back in Deutsche Bank, second line of defence, working in the role that I'm in now. So just to, I guess, give you a bit of background on what I do. So I guess it'll be important to explain what financial crime is.
Yeah.
So financial crime encompasses, you know, a number of different illegal activities. So it could be money laundering, terrorist financing, bribery and corruption, fraud, tax evasion. But the main ones sort of I focus on are money laundering, terrorist financing, and bribery and corruption. And just to put into perspective, I guess money laundering accounts for almost 3% of the world's GDP, which is around 2 trillion pounds, and it's a massive amount of money that's being laundered on a yearly basis. But it's a very hot topic at the moment, and I guess it keeps me in a job. But I guess
Do you have to track down where the problem came from? Do you have to deal with the problem yourself, or do you report?
Yeah, so I guess it's not as maybe glorified as it sounds, but just to give you a typical example, you know, and there's a number of like movies out there and serials that explain what money laundering is, and I've noticed a lot more focus around it in these different series that are, especially on Netflix. There's a typical example of a drug cartel. So they want to, you know, they've been operating for a number of years. They've acquired all this money from illegal activities, selling Class A drugs, and now they want to clean that money and make it look as though it's come from a legitimate source. So what they do is they'll set up. So there's a number of different ways that banks can be of use to these people. So they could set up a complex ownership structure. So they make it so convoluted that it's difficult for the likes of me to establish who ultimately owns that company or that structure. So they set up these very sophisticated organization structures, which then make it difficult for anyone that's investigating them to understand who actually is a true owner of these companies. So this is one of the things that I work on, understanding, and one of my specialist areas, I guess, understanding different entity types and understanding the way different entities are formed and set up, understanding the sort of the constitution behind them and the legal documentation that you know that they use in order to set these companies up. I guess I don't want to get too technical, but essentially, just to give you an example, so if you have an ordinary limited company and then you've got you know, so this drug cartel set up an ordinary limited company, and then they've got another company based in Cayman Islands, another company based in Venezuela, then another company based, you know, I don't know, in Russia, and then they've got a trust company set up as well. I mean, I think to an ordinary man, it just seems very confusing. So they've got companies set up in cross-jurisdictional companies set up in different parts of the world, different types of companies. So it's difficult to really understand who the true owners of those companies are. But just to give you an example, I guess trust is a typical sort of setup where, you know, these wealthy individuals who might not have money that's come from a legitimate source, they leave a lot of money to their children via trusts. So I guess that's a red flag in my industry. When there's too many trusts involved, if there's too many, you know, cross-border entities that are set up in a company structure, you know, if there's a number of layers in that structure. So there's a number of the sort of red flags. It's almost impossible to know when someone is laundering money. All we can do, I suppose, as an industry, is to sort of mitigate against those risks. So try and put in place certain controls to make sure that you know, those people aren't infiltrating the banking systems. So I guess, like I mentioned, there's a number of risk areas that we look at. There's country risk. So are they from a you know, high risk country, sanctioned country, basically the likes of, I suppose most of you will know, Iran, considered a sanctioned country. Are they what type of entity are they set up? So the most sort of complex structures involve special purpose vehicles, which are basically you know, companies that they only set up for a specific purpose and they fulfill their purpose and then they disappear. So it's very easy to launder money through that sort of avenue. And the other type of risks are, I guess, industry risks. So what industry do they practice in? Pharmaceuticals, construction, those types of industries are considered to be higher risk, I guess. So it's a matter of getting all those pieces of information together and putting a risk profile together for a particular client, and then and essentially working out whether that's within the risk appetite of our bank. And then the bank has a risk appetite statement. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I guess that's the crux of it.
You almost sound like a risk analyst.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of making decisions on a risk-based approach, but a lot of it is to do with ensuring the bank complies with money laundering regulations. So I work a lot with the policy teams who implement policies around money laundering, terrorist financing. So making sure that they're applying legislation correctly into their policies. So when sort of the analysts look at it, they can interpret it quite easily because a lot of this legislation is quite complex. So a lot of my job is revolved around interpreting that legislation and putting it into simple words for any person in the bank to then go and implement.
So basically, I have someone I know. His bank called him. So it's just a scenario, with real life scenario, and they said, this is your bank. We need your details. Can you send us your card details, your PIN number, and everything? And he thought, it's my bank. Of course, they know what they're doing. And he was going through something anyway, so he thought, okay, naturally, the bank is calling him for that problem. So, long story short, he basically sent them £2,000. And then when he called his bank, they were like, "We didn't call you," and so it was like a big problem. But the matter even had the mulakat Azur, and the person went to Azur and said to him, "Azur, this happened," and it was like, "Don't worry, you'll get your money back." I don't know in the real life situation if that they do that. They would just, you can just call you back and say, these people have taken my money and I want my money back. But in that situation, after a few weeks, the bank actually analyzed the situation and gave the money back. So what would is that?
I guess that's more, I guess that's more fraud related.
Yeah.
Rather than money laundering. Frauds can happen to anyone, I guess. Not my specialist area, but I guess I think most people are probably exposed to some sort of fraudulent behavior, or someone has approached someone to carry out some fraudulent activity, and it happens almost on a daily basis. I mean, I'm getting emails on a daily basis to ask
Nigeria and things like that.
To make them. So I get all these messages from regional clients up as well. This appeals and stuff.
Could you give us some advice though? Advice on how to recognize if something is like a fraud, or I know you don't work in that time, but through your experience.
How to identify? I guess there's a number of different factors to look at. I guess if you're talking about spam that you get through your emails, I mean, I think the biggest giveaway is probably the email address.
Yeah.
And I think if you're ever, I guess the advice I'd give is, if you're ever unsure, just quickly Google it, because someone or another would have created a sort of a forum where they discuss different scams and stuff. But I guess just to round up what I do and how I've also been involved in some work for Humanity First. It wasn't a massive amount of work, but Humanity First have been trying to set up sort of a subsidiary company where they want to try and obtain charity status, and a lot of the regulations around becoming a charity are quite complex. So I had someone approached me about essentially helping Humanity First to get that charity status, because they were finding it difficult to comply with the regulations, the money laundering regulations around it. And one of the difficulties in this area is that a lot of these charities they're used for laundering money purposes and terrorist financing and furthering the cause of terrorists. So I guess that's why it's a little bit more stringent, and the regulators want to know that that the money is coming from a legitimate source. So when we donate money, you and I donate money, sometimes they want to go down to that granular detail. Who are your biggest donors? So if for example making a big donation to Humanity First and it accounts for 25% of their revenue, then that sort of information needs to be sort of documented, so that when the regulators come in, they understand, okay, who are the donors, and then not only do we need to know who they are, we need to make sure that the right systems and controls are in place to make sure that those people are legitimate as well. So if I had a criminal record and I'm donating massive amounts of money and I've got a history of laundering money, then these guys, the charity should really have a mechanism whereby they're able to do background checks and to establish that this person is not legitimate, and we're not going to do business with them. So it's a number of controls that need to be in place to ensure that everything is above board. So that was some work that I was doing with Humanity First. We're trying to work with them. I think they want to create some policies as well around money laundering as well. It's quite a hot topic at the moment. I guess something that maybe some of the guys want to know obviously my background is legal. I didn't go on to practice as a fee earner. My advice to those that want to become a solicitor, I wouldn't put you off it, but I would say there's other avenues as well, because I thought that I was going, into either one of two routes, either become a solicitor or barrister. But then once I sort of acquired this knowledge into this niche area, I knew that I could utilize it in other ways in other industries. So always explore your opportunities, and there's always other avenues, or avenues that maybe not many people have explored. I guess I created my own sort of niche. Not many people, certainly in a law firm, the compliance or money laundering departments are very hard to come by, and they're only just being established. You guys got the technical terminology as well. This is the other thing.
Someone just asked you a question, Khurram, but I don't think it's directed to you. We'll answer that a bit later, Salman, yeah? So has anyone got any questions revolving around Khurram Bhai's work? Nas, you got any questions?
I've got a question actually. Right, do you know, like, obviously you've seen Power and stuff like that. Has anything come close to like Power or like Ozark? I've never seen that though, Ozark, but that's about money laundering, isn't it?
Most of the series are probably inappropriate to watch.
That's the first advice.
But there's, I suppose, so there's Power that involves a lot of money laundering, because they use a lot of their money in their laundrette to sort of wash it and clean it. There's Ozark, which is quite good. It's quite dark, but it's I definitely recommend it. They show real life examples of where money is laundered and how it's laundered. And then you've got Narcos, which is again not appropriate. I don't think you can, let alone Ramadan in a normal day. I think you've got so you've got a number of different shows that you can watch if you want to get an understanding of it. But I'm happy to provide any more information if anyone needs any. I'm not here to promote money laundering by any means, or to help anyone launder the money, but I'm more than happy to give you more information on it if needed. Any other questions?
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had one actually. How did you find it, like going from completely one profession to another? Like the challenges you faced in the start?
I guess it wasn't a complete change, because I was able to utilize my legal experience, and I didn't go to waste. This is the most important thing for me. When I made that transition, I didn't want to waste the experience I'd gained, and obviously the qualifications that I gained. So I was able to use the experience and the qualifications in the banking industry. That's what it was. So it was quite a smooth transition, although it was difficult to get used to the way banks work and the financial sector. Because obviously I was in a law firm where work was heavily based on fee earning and bringing money for the bank, whereas bringing money for the law firm. Whereas now I'm in a role where it's very operational, back office. There's no sort of targets monetary based. I guess our job is to prevent the banks being fined so heavily. So it's a preventative job, you could say. But again, it wasn't a difficult transition, and it was, I was able to utilize everything that I'd sort of built up into the new industry, I guess.
Okay. Have you done anything to catch someone?
I could get quite technical, but I guess there's a couple of interesting.
That's the juicy stuff, man.
Do you know what it is? It's because the nature of my work and the types of clients they're very like big organizations, very sophisticated. So it's not your ordinary individual that comes in.
कार्ड तो क्या है अकाउंट नंबर तो नहीं चेंज अकाउंट नंबर तो कहीं से भी लोग ले लेते हैं जो करना था अकाउंट नंबर तो
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so there's a particular example of a particular client that I was working on, and they had a number of PEPs. So PEP, I don't want to get too technical, but a PEP is essentially defined as a politically exposed person, all it means is that they're potentially, they've got a prominent public function and they're potentially corrupt politicians. So we had a number of those clients onboarded, but eventually we realized that they were too high risk and they were associated with, having done some background checks on them, associated with some quite bad sort of scandals that happened in the past. So we were in the process of offboarding these clients and essentially telling them we can't bank you anymore. And one of my bosses had to go out and sign off on some documents in Venezuela. These PEPs were based in Venezuela, so he had to go off and sign off on some documents to get these PEPs offboarded. And what happened was, one of the evenings he was told that he had someone come to see him, and so some of the criminals that were working with these corrupt politicians had come into the offices to meet my boss, and basically said, what you're trying to do here is it's not going to happen. Let me take you on a walk. And he took him for a walk, and he went down these spiral stairs at the back of the office, and there was a small plaque there, and on that plaque there were a number of names that were written, and he said, you know whose names these are? He said, these are exactly what you were doing in the past. So basically, don't think about it. Obviously quite a threatening or intimidating position to be in, because you don't know who the person in front of you is, and potentially, put your life at risk. So he got into a safe haven, came back to the UK, and I guess that was a like celebrity story that you could talk about. But we were able to offboard them in the end, and these PEPs, or these corrupt politicians, had been involved, and once we've done further investigation, and they were involved in numerous sort of scandals, and we were able to offboard them, but we had to do it all remotely. We couldn't go back into the offices, and we had to shut down some of the operations in the offices in Venezuela. So some cases are very interesting, and every day is not the same. But yeah, it's good stuff.
That's nice.
Any other questions, guys? I just had one more question for him. I usually ask this, like linking. I know you mentioned Jamaat a little bit, but how did you feel like your previous involvement in?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
1 second. There's a bit of noise going on. So, do you feel like that your previous experience working in the Jamaat before going uni and everything, and while you're in uni, you think that really helped you in your work?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I think without the blessings of Khilafat, I doubt I would have be where I am. And without the blessings that you get from doing all the Jamaat work, even if it just means holding a bucket and asking for money for charity, I think all of that sort of contributes towards the blessings that you get. And I think at every point in my career where I thought that maybe things could go bad here, because as a contractor, when I know my project's coming to an end, I start worrying, thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? Because obviously I've got a family to feed, and alhamdulillah, but pay a bit of sadaqah, make sure that try and be involved in Jamaat as much as possible, pray daily, and alhamdulillah, I get sometimes I just get a random phone call from nowhere, might get an offer of an opportunity. That's what happened when I moved to Manchester. I was coming close to the end of my contract, and I had nothing in the pipeline. And there were various Jamaat events going on at the time as well, and trying to get involved as much as I can. And alhamdulillah, I was offered a role from a consultancy who called out the blue. But other than that, I think again it's a lot of the Jamaat work that we do. We build a lot of I guess it helps us to build our interpersonal skills. Being able, having that confidence to go forward and speak, and public activity, charity work, all of it, I think, contributes to helping build us as individuals and having those sort of transferable skills that we can take into. So I'd say to those that are still studying, make sure you involve yourself in the Jamaat as much as possible. Sacrifice as much time as possible, because this doesn't matter how busy you are. If you've got exams, and I've heard the excuse all the time, but the times when I've had exams and it's been a struggle to do Jamaat work, those are the times that I've sort of reaped the rewards and the benefits.
I think it's really easy to, like, when you're on the other side, look back and say, yeah, and I was really glad I helped the Jamaat. But while you're in the moment, while you're studying, it's really difficult to make that decision. You think that I'm alone and I'm just going to do this myself and I'm the one that's going to get me to the other side. But once you're on the other side, you realize that I couldn't have done this without Allah's help. I couldn't have got that job, which that call that came to me. That wouldn't have happened if this person wasn't praying for me, if I didn't actually help the Jamaat in this moment. So it's actually those moments that Allah actually looks at us the most. And that's why it's really nice speaking to people who have already established their career or already in their work, so they can come back and like tell other people that, it's actually really beneficial to be involved in Jamaat as much as possible. And the way you talked about your grandfather, I think that's like the best thing, and that's like the best example for all of us. And I've seen him; he makes your own father and his brothers all look like they're older than him, because he's so active, mashallah, and he really gives back, and he always tries to show other people that, I remember him when he was in Islamabad, they were telling him to go into the wheelchair, and he was like, no, I want to walk. I want to be standing and witnessing this moment. So I think just by seeing him and talking to him, I think he is very inspirational.
Yeah.
I think just personalities like that really just humble us and make us realize that, where we need to be when we're reaching his age. So, yeah, man. Jazakallah. Thanks a lot for your talk. I think everyone will agree that it was really beneficial, and it's always nice to. I think everyone learned something new about you today as well. You can live 30 years. Sorry?
I don't know if I just confused everyone about what I do. That's always asked me what I do, and I guess this was a moment to understand.
That's what I'm saying. You can live 30 years with someone, they can still not have a clue what you do. It's nice to be able to share that. So Jazakallah, man. Really appreciate it.
Jazakallah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. Jazakallah. Really nice to have you again. Khadam Talks, as you know, something which we do every week. We try to grab someone new, whether they like it or not. It's nice that they surprise themselves, and they will end up realizing themselves that what I do can actually benefit someone else. And people who are growing up, going through school, you don't know if your work can actually inspire them to go into their line of work. And it's happened to a lot of people in Midlands as well. People who have gone into dentistry, they've seen each other going into it, and that's opened more doors for them to explore. So that's another really nice way to sort of pass down to the younger generation in that way.